Hi, everyone. I'm Miss USA 1994, Lou Parker, and you're listening to Life After the Crown with KTLA.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Life After the Crown podcast, where each episode I bring you useful interviews with former pageant contestants, title holders, and women of influence who are now succeeding across many different industries in the real world. My name is Tim Tialdo, lifestyle entrepreneur, pageant host, author, and quite honestly, somebody who just wants to help you become a better person overall. Now, if pageant life is over for you, or it soon could be, and you're wondering, well, what do I do now? Or what's next? This podcast is designed to help make the transition to real life and the school of hard knocks a little bit easier for you to handle. So if this is your first time listening, thanks for tuning in. We're glad you're with us today. Let's get started.
The first runner-up is Miss Virginia Pat Southall. That means Lou Parker of South Carolina is the new Miss USA.
That's the voice of host Bob Goen announcing Lou Parker as Miss USA 1994. Since winning the crown, Lou has worked in the television news business as an anchor and reporter for more than 2 decades. She's interviewed everybody from George H.W. Bush to Will Smith and has won 4 Emmys for her work. She is also the author of the book Catching the Crown, which covers everything from pageant preparation to the big night of competition. She also founded the lifestyle media brand Be Kind & Co., which focuses on kindness through acts, community events, health and fitness, animal welfare, food and beverage, travel, and so much more. And finally, perhaps her biggest passion is as an animal advocate. She has also been honored with 2 Genesis Awards from the Humane Society of the United States for her outstanding reporting and creative portrayals of animal protection issues, including investigations into puppy mills, elephant abuse, and Beagle Lab Testing. Lou Parker, I think that bio just scrapes the surface of all that you have going on in your career. You're quite an inspiration to many. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Tim. I'm so glad that you want to interview me. It makes me very happy.
Well, hey, I mean, you definitely deserve it. You're legendary. Come on, let's be honest.
Oh, you're funny. It's funny to think back how long it's been since I was competing in pageants. You know, we always laugh, and someone will be like, "Oh, you were Miss USA," and I'll say yes, and I'll be like, "It was 150 years ago." And I don't say 100, I say 150, and we always laugh.
Well, we're going to say almost, we're going to say almost 25. So you are as we talked about a little bit before, you're the last contestant from South Carolina to have won the Miss National Crown. So I guess going back, as you take a look back into the early 90s there when you started competing, what led you to want to compete in pageants at that time?
So it really goes back to when I was in high school. I was really into sports, to be honest. I'm kind of a tomboy and was playing softball and running track and basketball. But I went to a really small school in South Carolina, and small towns are all about pageants, right, too?
Oh, yeah.
And so we had our high school pageant, and I'm sure there were probably 10 of us in the pageant. That's about all, but Mom and I decided that I should be in it, and I was, and luckily I won it, and I got a taste of it at that point. And so I went on at that point to get into the South Carolina system with Paula Miles, with South Carolina Teen, and I competed in that when I was 15 and 16. So when I was 15, I got first runner-up, and I believe, if my memory is correct, I got first runner-up to Gina Tollison.
Yes.
Who went on to get first runner-up in Miss USA, but then won Miss World. And then we became friends once we all moved to LA years later, so that was a lot of fun. But then when I was 16, I decided to be in it again, and we laugh and say, my mom dyed my hair. I'm brunette, and my mom dyed my hair like with some really bad blonde highlights. I had some really big hair too, but I think I just sort of disappeared in that pageant in some capacity. And for whatever reason, I don't know, I just kind of stopped competing in the pageants at that point. I just probably got focused on basketball or track or whatever I was doing in school. And every year, Paula, back then, for the millennials listening today, we did not have internet or cell phones back then.
At all.
At all. So we basically, each year, I was on a list, obviously, because Paula is, pageant directors have a list of people who have competed. She would send me a letter every year, and typically I would not open the letters over the years. And just because I was focused on college and graduate school, I became a high school teacher after that, and year after year after year. But one year in 93, it was, spring of 93, I got a letter in the mail. I was teaching high school at the time. I was really young, like 23. And I got a letter in the mail that said, and I saw that it was from Paula and the state pageant, and I usually just would dismiss it because I thought that was over. And for whatever reason, as life has it, I opened that envelope. And maybe it was the place I was in at the time. I opened it and it said, "You could be the next Miss USA, the cash and prizes, and, move to LA and blah, blah, blah." And I thought for a second, I was like, maybe I should try this. And no, don't try it, And then I was like, well, I don't want to regret saying I could have maybe tried to do that, right? So I called my mom, and Mom was super supportive about it. And, I didn't have a lot of money. I was teaching school, and I had student loans, and I was worried about buying dresses and what everything that entails, Back then I wasn't sure what that meant. But I had the support from my mom and just made a commitment and got in really great shape and found this fabulous gay guy who was like amazing, Ernie Whiten, at the local hair shop. I went to get my hair colored. This is a funny story. I actually went to get my hair not colored, cut or do something with this lady who was really a big presence in my life. And I guess this guy, Ernie, had heard that I was going to be in a pageant, and he was all excited. So he came over and he was like, "Tell me all about it. Let me see your resume and let me see your application." And I brought the application in to him, and I had handwritten the application. And, "Girl, you need to type this." And again, no computers. I needed to type it on a typewriter, but I had handwritten it. So he sort of became my unofficial pageant coach, and we became fast friends. And I credit a lot of my winnings to him because he helped me focus on how I wanted to present myself physically, the look I wanted to go with, and just getting ready for interview. And then I won Miss South Carolina, and literally, I think it was like 6 weeks later, I won USA, and they moved me straight out to LA, and like my life changed 360 degrees.
Well, you're out there still in LA. So do you think that if you had not won Miss USA in 1994, do you think you would have ever moved to LA?
So I think about that fairly often because, it's interesting things that happen in our lives or the choices that we make in our lives. Or if I say I would have gotten first runner-up, right? Mm-hmm. I would have gone back to Charleston. So I don't know what that would have looked like. I think I always knew that I was supposed to be doing something. I'm not sure what that was. It was like this gut thing in me, just like the same thing that got me to start Be Kind & Co. And I had to trust my gut on it. So I don't know if I would have maybe settled down in Charleston or if I would have ended up in Atlanta. I would probably not have thought to move to LA because I had never been to LA and I didn't know what that looked like or what that felt like. But I do know that once I moved out here, I fell in love with the state and the city and the people, and even though I had to leave for a while in my business, my television business now, to basically come back here full circle, I don't think I would have ended up here. There would have been no reason, but who knows? I mean, I don't know what the plan was,
Well, thank God for Miss USA, plan. Right?
Yep.
So I did go back this morning and I went and watched the video from the 1994 Miss USA. And I was watching when they were just calling out the finalists. And as you were called, the commentator said, we interviewed her before the pageant, and she said that to win, you have to come to the pageant with it already in your mind that you are the winner. So when you got off the plane that year in South Padre Island, Texas, did you truly, honestly think that you were going to win?
People ask Olympians and different people a similar question because, it is a lot of a lot of your mindset, right? And I didn't think that way initially. Ernie, my unofficial coach, basically said when I was training for the pageant, he said, every day you walk out of your apartment door, you have to think of yourself as Miss USA. You're not Miss South Carolina USA. You are Miss USA. And so for 3 months when I was training and preparing, I'm a really good student. I love to have great instructors and teachers and stuff, and I love being a good student. If you tell me what I need to do, I'll get it done, So I did walk out of the house every day with a mentality of I am Miss USA, not like walking around like with the crown on my head like I'm Miss USA, but just sort of, thinking this is the space, almost like how I've learned now is to put things out into the universe, tell the universe what you want or what you're dreaming of and visualize it. And so I think at a young age, I had learned at that point to visualize what I wanted. Once I got to the pageant to compete, I in my heart was trying to stay focused as this is, keep your mind on why you're here. But at the same time, we're human, right? So you look around, there are a lot of pretty girls and a lot of accomplished girls and a lot of really cool, fun girls. And so I didn't know. I just know that I stayed focused the entire 2 weeks. I didn't look at it as a party or an opportunity to make new friends. I made new friends. I actually made a couple of really great friends. But I did stay focused on my index cards and the questions and my thoughts on current events. And I read the newspaper, imagine that, every day instead of the internet. We didn't have internet. But I read the newspaper every day to stay current. So in case a judge brought up some kind of current event or anything. One thing I do, though, remember, Tim, is that when I tell this story pretty often, which I find really surprising that maybe I was even able to do this at a young age, or maybe I just was in such a focused mind. We had already been chosen as top 15, I think it was 15 back then. Then we did swimsuit, and I felt confident about swimsuit, but it wasn't, my strongest. I never thought swimsuit was my strongest. I always thought interview was my strongest, but now it was time for evening gown. And I loved the song and, having the military guys out there. And I was standing behind the curtain, and I remember standing there in my gown. And, they had probably 6 girls in front of me, and the music was so beautiful. And I knew I was next, and the other girl was wrapping up, coming up the runway. And I remember thinking in my heart and in my head, just make it easy for them. Show them that you're the one. Just make it easy. It's that simple. Just go out and show them. Like, they want it to be easy, and just go out with exuding, kindness and grace and happiness and beauty and just, that's all you have to do. Don't be nervous. And I talk to myself in that way, which I think is a great lesson down the road, that to learn and for everyone to speak highly to yourself or confidently to yourself as opposed to beating yourself up. And I turned that corner, and it was surreal. It felt so amazing when I stepped out on the stage. And that's at that point is when I felt I'm supposed to be in this moment at this time, right now. It just felt like I was floating on the stage. Now, does that mean I thought I was going to win? No, because then I got to get the top 3, and then I got to answer that dang question, and then I got to have a decent answer, and then, and then I got to go through all the numbers. But I did feel confident during interview at that point. And I don't know if confident is the right word. I think just I felt like I was supposed to be there in that moment.
Well, I love the mindset and I love the approach, and I think that's a really good bit of advice for a lot of the girls competing today. Now, there's another thing I wanted to ask you, because there are a ton of young women these days that completely and solely compete for the purpose of feeling like, I am enough. And the crown or the feeling of competing for that crown gives them that sense of validation. So from your standpoint, what did the pageant experience do for your self-esteem or maybe your sense of worth at that point?
Funny that you say I am enough, because that's my mantra that I say a lot to myself. I would say to the girls, first off, I'll talk about myself in a second about that, but I'll say to the girls, anyone who's competing, is that you're enough before you compete. You're enough just being you and your skin, and who you are. Being in a pageant is great, and having a crown and winning a sash is, icing to the cake, but you already are enough. Because you can't take all that stuff with you, and it's not going to necessarily make other people like you more or you like yourself more until you know that you're enough and you truly believe that. Nothing that you put on your body, a crown, a sash, a title, anything's going to change that. So from an older lady to a younger gal, pageant girls or not, I think that is definitely something I've learned over the years. But for me, I don't know exactly if the pageant, I think first of all, I love people and I love competition. I'm very competitive. I love sports and I love to talk, and I like being in front of people to share And I think that's what the pageant brought me. I think by winning, it didn't necessarily make me feel enough, because I think I'll struggle with being enough until my last breath. I think we all do. But being in the pageant, I think, afforded me the ability to go out and affect hopefully 1, 2, 3, hundreds of people's lives just by saying one thing, shaking their hand, being able to have a conversation with them, taking a picture with them, whatever it is that they needed. I think if I was able to give that to them by having the title and the crown, I think that's a beautiful thing. And it's what I said in Universe when I was on the stage in top 6. I had not thought of the question when they asked me. I thought of every other question that they asked me, what is your mission in life? And I had honestly not thought about that. And I basically said, I'm an educator or, a teacher, because I was at the time. And if I can help one person along their path, then my life has been worth it. And that was not a canned answer. That came from my soul, So I think I've always felt that way. And I think that's where it's all transitioned into this whole Be Kind and Co. thing too, is I've always wanted to help, to a default sometimes.
Yeah.
But in a positive way, I think the pageants just allowed me to go out and build confidence and say, I can talk to a crowd of 5,000 people, or I can talk to a crowd of, 3 intimate teenagers in a room. I love it.
Well, so what I'm hearing, and this really mirrors what I've heard from other national title holders as well, is the pageant and the crown really didn't change you, but I guess it more amplified or magnified who you already were. Does that sound about right?
Yes, and I think it also, by winning it basically said, yes, it said basically, again, you're right, I am enough to be able to step out and go out and share whatever it is you want to share. Some of the girls want to share fitness, some want to share wisdom, some want to share something about a nonprofit or their passion, and I think I allow for you to be able to, even if you don't win, I think just being in them and being able to go up there and say your name and say what city you're from, and then have a conversation with 8 strangers or 6 strangers that are the judges, and be confident in that. It's only going to make you better down the road.
Sure. Now, you have stayed involved in the pageant industry in some respects over the years. Just a couple of years back here, you and I actually met at Miss Teen USA out at the Venetian there in Las Vegas when you were judging the Miss Teen USA pageant. Now, that particular pageant, it got a lot of press for, reasons that are, well beyond what you were doing. Of course, the winner was accused of racism on Twitter, and then, people were, ridiculing the judging panel for picking 5 blondes in the top 5. And I thought you guys did a great job. I was there. And can you talk about kind of what it's like in this day and age to be a judge for one of these national pageants that are televised or even, put on the internet?
Yeah, that was an interesting outcome that happened. But like I was telling a friend of mine the other day, they were asking me about pageants, and I can't remember how it came up, and about judging or something. And they were like, yeah, but they're pretty much, they don't know anything about pageants, but they were like, but the judging's pretty much rigged, right? So they basically say, they kind of figure out like who the 5 are, and they say, and I was like, what? And they were like, but no, they split like politically, or depending on what state they're from, like what look they want. And I was like, no. I was like, you have no idea. Like, it is a lottery. It's like, you go up and you do your best, but numbers are punched and numbers are written down, punched into a machine or written down on a piece of paper. And depending on who those judges are and their personal likes, their personal preferences, it all just comes together, and whoever gets the highest number is who wins. It's pretty simple. There's no like, oh, let's manipulate this or manipulate that, right? So by judging, for me, I sometimes realize, how in the heck did I win when I'm judging? Because I think it really is a lottery. Because if you and I are judging next to each other, and say like 2 other people are judging, right? So we've got a panel of 4. Mm-hmm. You may have a preference for blondes. I may have a preference. I like a brunette look, or my other friend may like, an Asian look or whatever. You just never know. Like, so all that goes into the judging, and then depending on personality and what they say and what your dress looks like, it all. Sometimes I feel like it's just fate that somebody comes and it's their night, like they might not shine in rehearsals, But then that night, for some reason, it was their night, it was their moment, and they were supposed to be there. So when I go in to judge, every time they always say, this is what we're looking for, and this is, it's a beautiful, just fine, you'll know when you see her. There'll be a lot of them, but you'll figure it out. Everyone figures it out, When I go in, I just think, I'm going to go in and look at, if I'm judging a state pageant, I look at it as, can this girl be Miss USA, right? If you're judging a national pageant, can this girl be whatever the national pageant is? Or if you're judging a county pageant, can this girl be the state girl? Mm-hmm. And if you really look at it that way, I think it, because all the girls are great. I mean, they're all, and it's hard because everyone's excited to be there and they're all putting in 100%. So, but there's always just a few girls that stand out just a little bit more, be it the interview or their poise on camera or whatever it may be. But I just try to really stick to, can she go to the next level? Because ultimately the pageant system wants her to go to the next level, but she wants to go to the next level too, right? So that's sort of how I look at it. And I would say I'm not a high-low judger either. I'm more of in the middle. I don't go extreme low and extreme high. Yeah. I sort of keep it, some people do, 0 or 10, I usually do between 5.5 and 9.5. Depending on what the numbers that we're supposed to be doing.
And I'll tell you, one of the biggest questions I get all the time, I've done state judging. I've never done national judging like you, but, they always ask, what are you looking for? Now, from an attribute standpoint, I always say my number one is confidence. What is it for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, you mean on stage or in person?
Well, I think a little bit of both. I mean, sometimes, as you mentioned, there's, I think Kristen Dalton and Shandy Finnessy call it the sparkle effect, that it factor, whatever you want to call it. But usually there's something, in your repertoire of kind of what you're looking for, that this is the number one thing for you. And then, there's 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah. I would say confidence, but there's a fine line of confidence. Wouldn't you say, you don't want someone to be...
between confidence and arrogance, yes.
Right, where it's almost where they're trying too hard.
Yeah, very much so.
I don't know if it's just my inner... I feel like it's going to sound total gypsy, but I feel like I can read people's energies a little bit, just when someone's in my presence, and I just know, I can sometimes feel, unless they're nervous or something, that they're genuine, when it comes to interview. When it's on stage, it's similar. I guess they would describe that pretty well, the sparkle effect. Mm-hmm. But it's sort of like an aura around them, where they sort of glow. It's that glow, sparkle, confidence mixed with grace. I think it has to be a mix between confidence, where, yes, I'm here, look at me, but I'm also graceful and classy and regal, but I can also get down and paint with children at the hospital and play with kids out on the playground or work with the homeless or, whatever. It's you have to really feel that from all of that from a woman.
Yeah.
And that, that says a lot.
Well, and you certainly bring credibility, to being a judge, because you actually wrote a book for the pageant industry called Catching the Crown, the source for pageant competition. And for those of you listening, if you want to get it, it is available on Amazon. Now, I did read a little bit about it. I've actually never read the book itself, but the topics include advice on hair, skincare, makeup, physical prep, and what to expect during competition. But what's fun is that you go a step further. So you talk about traveling, dealing with the press, packing, fan mail, and even boyfriends. So, I guess what prompted you to write the book and really get into those deep issues?
Well, what prompted me to write the book is, first of all, I love to write. But I was living in LA after the pageant, and Pageantry magazine called and just asked if I could do an article for them, basically top 10 tips that you would have for a girl competing in a pageant. And, naive me, I was like, why would they ask me that? Why would they have me write? And then I'm like, duh, and someone's like, hello, honey, you were Miss USA.
Nice.
Oh, okay. So, which made me sit down and start writing. Okay, what are those? What, if I did have to tell someone top 10 tips, what would those look like? And so I started writing and writing and writing and writing. Eventually it turned into a book. It was never an intention to write a book, but that article, all of a sudden it was page after page after page. And I wrote the book a really long time ago, and then I republished it and updated it a little bit because I wrote it so many years ago. so some of the stuff is a little outdated and basic, but what I think is important with my book is that, I really truly believe that interview, you can look great on stage and present well on stage. Most girls are have gotten fit, they have a pretty dress, they look good, and, but I think interview is so key, and it's something I really truly believe that the girls have to focus on. And so I talk about that a lot in my book. And I talk about the importance of meeting the judges as if you were meeting them at a party or an event or church or with your parents or, depending on your age, meeting that person and saying hi and having a conversation as opposed to waiting for the question. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, being interviewed,
instead
basically.
Of being interviewed. It's not it's called interview, but it shouldn't be an interview. It should be a conversation. And so I talk about that, and I think that really helped me in the pageant because I had conversations with them as opposed to answering, okay, what do you got next for me? Okay, I answered that. Okay, what's next? And then, oh my God, it's 4 minutes over or whatever, whatever the situation is, even with panels, Then once I got done with competition aspect, I was like, well, there's a lot of stuff that comes afterwards. You've got to realize now you're a role model in the community and what that looks like. How do you relate to fans and how do you respond to fans and how and boyfriends? I mean, that's a big deal. Like when someone wins and you've got a boyfriend, how do you deal with that? You may have to be traveling a lot, or you may have to move to a different city, or how to ease that with them. And I also wrote about my memoirs and traveling around and all the great places that I got to go and the people I got to meet. And so it's more of a memoir with those tips on interview. And one of the things that inspired me too is when I had just won Miss USA and I just gotten to LA. I think I'd only been there 2 weeks. The Miss USA 1976, and I'm totally brain cramping on her name right now. We might have to look it up. She also wrote a book. And I think she's the only other person who wrote kind of a how-to book. And she sent it to me and basically said, welcome to the sisterhood, enjoy every minute. And I thought that was so amazing. And so I send my book each year to the winners and say, welcome to the sisterhood.
That's really
similar
cool.
Kind of passive. Yeah, even though it's, kind of outdated, but, you forget, or I did, not you, I forgot that, I never really even thought about that until it was backstage when I was giving up the crown. And I think Carl Dunn from Pageantry Magazine, and he was like, so, honey, are you excited about, giving up the crown, or are you wanting to hold on to it tight? And I was like, well, I actually kind of feel both. I sort of am ready. While I'm grateful that I had all this, I'm actually sort of ready to look forward to what's next. But at the same time, it's I don't know if I want to give it up, because once I give it up, it's we would tease, we'd say, you arrive in the limo and then you're leaving the cab, and then he was like, honey, you don't have to worry about that. Once you're a Miss USA, you're always a Miss USA. And I just thought, I've never forgotten that. And I've tried to remember that, all throughout my life as well, as the other girls come along, to welcome them to the sisterhood, because, it started in 52. And so there are only a select number of us, that have been lucky enough to have held that title. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting to be able to meet other Miss USAs or email with them or follow them on Instagram, because even though we may not know one another, we do know one another, right? Mm-hmm. Because we have this unspeakable bond or unbreakable bond that we'll always have no matter what.
Well, I love that line. I think we should use that as the tagline for Miss USA. Arrive in a limo, leave in a cab.
Well, now these days it's arrive in a limo, leave an Uber.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, so that's a lot about your pageant background, and we've covered a lot. But now we get into this illustrious career that you have, and let's talk about the one thing that you're known for probably best right now. That is that you're an anchor and reporter on KTLA 5 in Los Angeles. Of course, this is the second biggest media market in the country. I know you've probably had to work your way up to get there. Talk about your TV career path. I know you said you had to leave LA for a little bit to kind of work your way up through the markets and to get back. Just kind of talk about that path and what it's been like.
Well, it's been amazing. I was working out. So I won Miss USA and I traveled for a year. And back then housed you in Los Angeles now. Once Donald Trump bought it in 97, they send all the girls to New York, but back then we would come to LA. So I moved to the big city, and I was like, big eyes and excited, and lived here for a year. And then once I gave the Crown up, I stayed an additional year, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do because I was a former teacher, but I didn't really have a California teacher's license, and people wanted me to do acting, or they were like, you can model, or you can do different stuff, and I'm not a good actress. I do not fly on command. So, but I knew that I have to be honest, I felt once the camera was on me, I felt very comfortable speaking to the camera. So I had to look at that, not as an actress, but something felt right as speaking in front of the camera. It never made me nervous. So randomly, my agent at the time said, hey, the Charleston, South Carolina CBS station is looking for an education reporter position. Would you be interested in going back? And I was like, no, I want to stay in LA. No, I don't want to go back. And I don't know how to report. I mean, what does that even mean? And they were like, well, they want to talk to you about maybe coming back and doing positive stories about education because you're a former teacher, you're from Charleston, they had followed you to Miss USA and Miss Universe. And so, like, they were basically bringing me back as a name, right?
Yeah.
So I went and I met with them and told them no, like, twice, because I was like, I really didn't want to leave LA because I loved LA. But then I realized I'm going back to Charleston where I love. And I'll be on TV. And worst case, I don't like it or whatever, I can always go back to go back to LA. So I packed up all my bags and went to Charleston and worked for WCSC, which was amazing. I was really, 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 really bad.
Well, I was going to ask you, you obviously you didn't study broadcasting. That wasn't going to be what you wanted to do.
No, I did not study broadcasting.
What was it like to try and be a journalist without any type of background?
It was painful. Well, at first I just basically did track, and which means like I would just voice over things and I wouldn't be live on camera. But eventually they started letting me go, to cover the school board meetings, and then I would have to go live outside, and I would memorize it, Tim. I would be, I knew what I was going to have to say. Debbie and Bill, today, whatever it was, and I would memorize it, which is the biggest mistake, because if you're nervous and you've memorized and you stumble, then you're hosed.
Yeah,
like there's no going back, right?
Yep.
So number one lesson in journalism is don't memorize it, just say what you know, like kind of summarize what's going on, kind of know what you're going to say, but don't memorize. So it was so funny because many times I would do the live shot, mess it up, or stumble or whatever, and then I'd immediately call one of my best friends and I'd be like, oh, I hate myself. That was so bad. And they always said, it wasn't as bad as it probably felt like. And then it was. I look back on those videos and, it was painful. But, it's like anything. You learn something at a new job. If you're an accountant or if you're a baseball player or whatever it is, you're just not on TV for everybody else to see your mistakes, But eventually I got better, and I started filling in for the noon anchor when she was out sick. And the first time I did that, I thought that everyone on the TV could hear my heart, like boom, 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 boom. I was so nervous, but I made a tape and then got a job in San Antonio, Texas. And so I moved to San Antonio, Texas on my 30th birthday. And I moved out there. I didn't know anyone except the person who had hired me. And I moved there and had a fabulous time. I worked at Fox, the Fox affiliate local station there for about 6 years, and then I was trying to get out to LA, and fortunately, the CBS station there called and wanted to create a morning show, like an entertainment fun, like hosting morning show, and I was like, that sounds so awesome, but Thank you, but I want to go to LA. They're like,
thanks, but no
well,
thanks.
I'm offering you this show, and you can be the host, and I was like, thank you, but I really want to go to LA, so we went back and forth, and we laugh about it now because, he finally said, okay, fine, I'll give you an out, meaning like if LA calls, if some market in LA or station calls, I'll let you out, So I did that show, which I loved doing. It was an entertainment show. I was the host, and we had a really small staff and no prompter. It was a lot of ad-lib, and I think I learned to ad-lib there. I learned to be super comfortable on camera and interview people, and it's definitely what I was supposed to do. And then KTLA called in like early 2005, and I got a job as the weekend anchor and general assignment reporter at KTLA. And I moved, and I haven't left, and I'm still working with them. It's a great company. It's changed hands several times, but I have an amazing group of managers, and I really, really love what I do, Tim. Like, it's when I'm on the desk anchoring, I feel so at home up there. It's almost as if I'm with friends, and because I have a lot of friends that work there, and while we have to tell really bad stories sometimes, and we have to get into super serious stuff, the majority of the time I'm just there telling stories and sharing good and bad, but it's definitely what I was supposed to be doing, I think, because it feels right. Like 99% of the time I want to go to work. I definitely need mental days sometimes, and I definitely need a vacation sometimes, and I have to get away from news, and, I don't want to have to work every day, but I really love what I do. And that's something I share with young people too, is that don't do what your parents want you to do. Find something that turns you on every single day, that when you get up, you want to write, or you want to, whatever it is, you want to go work in TV, or if you want to be a doctor, or if you want to be an artist or a musician or whatever it is, because it is the worst. I can't imagine having to go to work Monday through Friday or Tuesday through Sunday or whatever it is, and not at least liking what you're doing, because life's too short. And I also tell people, even if you're in your 40s or your 30s or, heaven forbid, your 50s, you can always figure out a way to change that career. Like, you don't have to stay in something that doesn't make you happy.
Well, and I love how you graduated through your career. I mean, back then, which is, how I did it as well. I mean, you graduated through the markets, you kind of earned your keep, and then you worked your way up to the bigger markets. Now, I was in 165, then I worked my way up to 82, and then I got up to market 19, which was St. Louis. You're in the number 2 market in the country,
yeah,
and there's a lot of attention on LA. What is it like to work in really one of the top 2 biggest markets in the country and just, cover all that's going on there?
It is never ending. I always say that we are definitely on a treadmill that does not turn off. It's like you jump on the treadmill and you just hold on for dear life, especially with news, because especially with my newscast, we cover international, national, and local. And so international is always, things are happening, and then nationally, of course, everything politically, and then shootings and fires and everything. But then you come down to local, and we've got car chases and our own fires and just bad stuff that's happening. But KTLA is really great about bringing positive stories to the forefront as well. We do a lot of stuff in the community, and we try to tell. Yeah, it's so needed. It's such a balance, and they've been great with me, allowing me to, tell stories that I'm passionate about people who are making change, or people who have come from nothing that have changed someone else's life or made something of themselves, or animal issues. They've been really great with me, saying, do what you need to do. I think they trust me, that I'm going to tell a story that's not right or left, that's just, a good story that has a message, or that more importantly helps someone. And so working in LA I forget sometimes how large of a market it is. I think I just sort of like it so much and love it so much. And back to the confidence thing that you were talking about with the pageants, is that I feel so confident with what I do that I don't think, oh goodness, I'm getting ready to go on TV in the number 2 market in the country. A lot of people are watching right now. If you start thinking that, then you can just make a mess of yourself, because then you're like, oh no, my hair doesn't look great today, my makeup, I'm tired from the weekend, I've got puffy eyes, all that can come into play, or I hate this dress, or I feel fat, or, it's like,
you name it.
Tim, it's the important things. It's how you look, right?
Yeah. So my hair was always bad, so I just shaved it off.
Right, exactly. Maybe I should do that.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's probably a good idea. So you go to South Carolina, not even really knowing how to report. Now, you're 20 years in, you've got 4 Emmys. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
As you and I both know, TV allows you to do some so many things that the average person honestly will never be able to do. So if you look back on your career right now, what's really probably been some of the most rewarding either stories you've covered, people you've interviewed, or just things you've got to participate in? I know there's usually some one or two things that stick out as like, I can't believe I got to do that.
There's been some pretty cool things. I mean, for a while I was doing entertainment reporting, which was a lot of fun. So, that was always sort of pinch yourself when you're on the red carpet and Bradley Cooper is walking towards you, or Tom Cruise or Oprah, or like name it. They walked up to me, and like because I had a microphone and I was interviewing them, and that was always kind of like, wow, this is cool. Or being able to go to the Academy Awards or interview at the Grammys. Just Aretha Franklin just passed this week, and I went back in my archives and found a picture of when I interviewed her, and I was nervous to interview her because she was like Aretha Franklin, and I was at the Staples Center, and it was a one-on-one, and I remember thinking, oh no, you just never know if they're going to be a prima donna or not.
Yeah,
and she came in, she was so sweet and just so gracious, and just having that chance to be able to sit down with her and for them to be cool, And then like Kendrick Lamar, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's a big rapper. I was introduced to him before he became famous, like right when he was about to blow up. He was already on the radio, but no one knew who he was. And so I got to go to Compton, where he's from, and I went back to his old studio, and, there were holes in the leather couch, and the studio was like super small little house behind another house, and I went in and interviewed him, and he rapped for us like on his lyrics on the microphone. And looking back at that, it was just really cool, and what he's been able to do with his career. And I pinch myself sometimes in that I'm able to do those kind of stories, right? But then I go back to Texas when I was able to work with Muscular Dystrophy Association, and I did stories prior to the telethon, and I specifically got close to this police officer who had Lou Gehrig's disease, and I followed him for several months, and from when he could stand to when he ended up in a wheelchair to when he was having a really hard time breathing, where I could barely even interview him the day of the telethon. And just to be able to share his story and his journey has always been really important to me. He ended up passing, but looking back, I knew nothing about neuromuscular diseases and Lou Gehrig, and to be able to go into their home and to see what they struggled with. And he was, this big, strong police officer, and Lou Gehrig's disease is so horrible. It whittles you down to nothing, but your mind is still intact. So I was still able to communicate and have great conversations with him, but he just was fading, and I was able to share his story. And I thought that, and that was a long time ago. And I still think of him. And so he affected me, and being able to tell stories correctly, and to be able to share someone's story and be gentle with the storytelling as opposed to just telling a story,
Isn't that great when you do those types of stories, and it truly like completely changes your life, and you're thinking, I just went out to do a story today, and I walked away thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to change my life forever.
Well, I took a break from journalism for about a year out here in Los Angeles. I was dating someone, and they wanted me to be able to travel with them and be able to do some stuff, and I was working a night shift. So I just kind of took a break for a year, and I was lucky enough to be able to do that. But one of the last times, and I never have gone back to necessarily reporting out in the field. I've been lucky enough to anchor, but one of the last times I remember thinking that same thing how you're saying, is that I had gone out. I think a gentleman had been golfing with a friend, and a golf ball hit him. His friend hit a golf ball, and it like went awry and hit him in the head and killed him, right? Mm-hmm. And so we knew that this guy had been killed at a golf course. And unfortunately, as a reporter, I can find anybody, right? Because you just figure it out. Yep. Especially with the internet and stuff. So by the time the end of the day was, I'd gone to the golf course. Of course, I got kicked off the golf course. They didn't want us to be there. I got kicked off the golf course, shot that, interviewed the police officer to get the facts. And then I found his house. Right? And what do you want to do? You want to find someone who knows him, right, to interview or to say something about him. And none of the neighbors were around, and we found his house, and I walked up, and And a lot of times, sometimes reporters will go up with the cameras rolling. I've never been that reporter. I've always been the reporter who, goes with the camera down, and then you ask, would you like to talk? And if they say yes, then you put the camera up, right? And you don't just go barging into someone's personal life. But I went and I knocked on the door, and I always tell the stories. I knocked on the door, but not really hard, right? Like I just kind of knocked on the door because I really didn't want her to answer. I really didn't want his wife to answer, or because that's just it's so awkward, But at the same time, it's my job. And I knocked, and then my photographer was like, "Can you knock a little louder?" And I was like, "Okay." So I knocked, and I was like, "They're not home, right?" And I walked away, and a few seconds later, the door cracked, and it was her. And she was so gracious and so sweet and crying, and she didn't want to talk on camera, of course. And I had a great conversation with her. She told me all about it. So I was able to tell his story and her story without her going on camera. Mm-hmm. And I finished my live shot. The story was well done. I felt like I was able to tell the personal side of it. And it was a Friday, and we were a long ways out of LA, like 20 minutes out or something, 30 minutes out. And I was like, okay, done, yay. Good, story's done. Like, I'm done with my live shot. Day's over. Let's pack it up and go. It's Friday. I'm ready to go out, but then all of a sudden it hit me, and I was like, I just did my job, and now that's her new life. There's no walking away from it. I will never forget that woman either. Just the pain I saw in her eyes, So journalism is interesting because we get up close and personal. But then at the same time, I talk about death and destruction every day, and I have to close my heart off because if I get emotional about it, I can't be up on the desk and being like, I've got a story to tell you. I have to close it off. But occasionally, those kind of stories get you. Like and I've done even worse stories. I've done, lots of shootings and stabbings and all kinds of. But occasionally, something affects you, and you realize, I need to be a better journalist, even better. Like I need to be even more sensitive and even better, and just and it just reminds you, you never know what people are going through. And like that was her new norm on that Friday night. He wasn't coming home.
Well, gosh, as you say that, it brings back memories very quickly. A quick story on my end. I became we'll just call me the dead soldier guy for my news station. So This was back during the war, and every time somebody from our area was killed in action, and it ended up being 13 of them. My very first one, I actually just had a very good experience in which they did answer the door. The interview went great. The father actually called my news director and said, Tim did a great job. Thank you so much. And then it was a blessing and a curse at the same time because then every time, somebody was killed in action, they were like, Tim, time to go out. And I'm like, oh, and it was, so hard, but so life-changing. And I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's brutal. And I still sometimes wonder how people talk. Right after something. I guess people are in shock or they're,
that's what I would say. I would say if I were you, I would slam the door in my face. So I totally understand if you want to do that. And that's what I would always say.
Exactly. People are people, you just never know who wants to talk and who doesn't. But it's an interesting business. And, it's a medium that we're able to share a lot. Just even with social media, you're able to share a lot of good stuff. But there's a lot of negative out there. So that's one of the reasons, like with Be Kind & Co., I'm really trying to push, especially just with everything that's going on right now. I just feel like there's so much angst and negativity and bullying, and I we've forgotten to listen to one another and be kind and like help someone across the street or buy someone a coffee or just actually stop at work, and if someone says, how are you, stop and say, hey, I'm good, how are you? And really mean it, not like, I'm good, thanks, and just keep going. Because maybe they want to talk to you about something or listen when someone, one thing that drives me crazy is like, and I think it's so kind to like stop and listen, is when someone comes over to you or you go to someone's office and they just keep typing while they're talking to you or they're looking at their computer while they're talking to you. But clearly someone's come to you to ask you a question or they need your advice or something. They're not just coming over there to bug you, And all it takes is take a deep breath, stop typing, look away from the computer, and look them in the eyes and say, how can I help you? What do you need? And let that happen. Even if it's a 3-minute thing, or if it's going on too long, just say, hey, I really appreciate it. I've got to get back to my work. But instead of like just staying on the phone or talking on the phone or typing, it drives me crazy. So that's one thing I'm trying to do is to focus a little bit more, listen a little bit more.
Well, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Be Kind & Co. Outside of your TV career, you are an entrepreneur. Be Kind & Co. is predicated, as you've mentioned, on the thought of being kind to others. You mentioned, I think, a little bit earlier in the podcast that you just kind of felt this urge, this universal urge to start something like this. Where did it come from?
It's interesting because I keep trying to figure out, looking back, I think as a little kid, I was sort of like that kid who was like saving all the animals in the neighborhood. I had like a little cemetery in the backyard. So I was like a little kind kid, and I think I'm still just like feel like I'm a 12-year-old who just wants to hang out and, have fun with, kids and the animals and stuff. But I think it evolved over the years, and I think I've always felt the need, like I was telling you earlier in the interview, to help or to be kind to people. And something did happen to me, like, a little under 2 years ago, where I was being helpful and trying to be kind, and it just was a perfect storm, and some bad things happened, and I wanted to give up on kindness, and I wanted to, I looked at myself as being naive, and I was like, you need to stop trying to help people. Like, what's your problem with always wanting to help people, And so but my friends all said, if you stop being kind, then we're going to stop being kind. You're going to be crazy people like us and mean, and you're the one who's always the nice, who's being nice out there. So it made me reassess kindness and realize that I've got to stay true to myself. And no matter what happens, if you get burned from it, or if, someone thinks you're weak because of kindness, then you just have to stay steady with it, because kindness wins in the end. It really does. Like, even if someone thinks you're weak, or thinks that you're naive because you're kind, that's fine. But ultimately, I think kindness does win. Like, people, if you had to pick a mean team or a kindness team, eventually people are going to go over to the kind section, right? Mm-hmm. And so after all that happened, I was going to write a book, and, then I was going to maybe try to do some kind of kindness urge on social media to get people to do something. But then I just gave up on it again. And I was like, you know what, maybe I just let go of this kindness thing and stop. Why do I have to share kindness? Like, what is it? So I just let's just walk away from it. But I promised him, like, everywhere I looked, it was like a sign that said, be kind, or like I was reading an article and that someone was talking about nothing about kindness, and then the article would end about kindness or something. And so one day I woke up, it was my epiphany, my aha moment. I always loved Huffington Post, but Ariana Huffington also started something called Thrive Global. It's a site that's pretty positive and, has articles on really positive things. And I was like, that's what I want it to look like. I want to have contributing writers. I want people to write on all types of kindness. It's not about just going out and doing acts of kindness. It's about how we can be kind in every aspect of our life, if it's recycling, or if it's, being kind to your neighbor, or if it's being kind. A guy just wrote a contributing article that's going to post in the next day or so about dating apps, and how he's a young millennial, and he's writing about how dating apps have basically stopped our ability to actually have a conversation with someone, because, you're talking to them on an app or choosing them on an app. Then you're not talking on the phone, you're texting, and then you might show up or you might not. But he was like, and ultimately he ended the article by saying, and remember, be kind to yourself. You are enough. No matter what your profile says, no matter what, if someone swipes left or right, you are enough. Remember, be kind to yourself. And I thought it was so well written and so insightful from, a young male millennial who's just out there trying to find his way, But we're also doing travel. I'm really interested in travel and finding places where people can go that locations you have a choice of where you stay. If a place is being cool to the earth, or if a place is helping the homeless, or whatever it is. I really feel like it's still evolving. I just started it 3 months ago. So it's a community that I'm trying to build right now on Be Kind & Co. And then from that point, I'm wanting to have women's conferences where we have people come and speak about situations in terms of kindness, but not just like, oh, be nice to people in the community. It's more about how can we really change the thought on kindness, like being kind to ourselves. What does that look like? I mean, when was the last time you were kind to yourself, or looked in the mirror and said, I love you, you're awesome, great arms, or, whatever it is, as opposed to, oh my God, your hair looks horrible, you've got bags under your eyes, when you got to stop eating those chips. It's like how we can be kind to ourselves. And it's not just women, it's men too. It's all of us,
Well, and it's a great topic, and you mentioned the part earlier about being naive, and thinking, well, gosh, maybe people are going to take advantage of me if I'm being too kind. Take it from a guy's standpoint. I remember back in high school, it was always remember the nice guy finishes last, the cocky athlete or the most popular guy in school. Those were the ones that, quote unquote, always got the girl. And now, 20 years removed from high school, I can honestly tell you the nice guys are the ones who have great marriages, who have great families, who are being successful. So for those of you listening who think nice guys finish last, I can assure you that's wrong. And I'm sure
that is 100%.
Isn't that great?
Yes, that's such a great example, Tim, because and one of my sayings is kindness is a strength. It really is. I mean, it's not a weakness. I say that in my opening video, and people have to remember that it is a strength, and people are drawn to that, and it really does win in the end. Whatever that looks like.
Now, you love to give back as well, as in addition to your Be Kind & Co. So you've got something called the Lou Parker Project. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would live in a dog pack if I could. I am definitely a dog, but I also, I just love animals and creatures in general. And my whole thing is I've just always wanted to give voice to the voiceless. And I've been doing it in some capacity all my life, but back in 2009, I started a project called Lou Parker Project, and primarily for years we worked directly with the shelters in Los Angeles, and we renovated one of the shelters that was really drab and dark colors and burgundy and tan, and we were able to go in with volunteers and young teenagers who are artists who wanted to be able to share their art, and we gave them a platform for that, and photographers. And for a long time, I was in the cages, cleaning poo and washing the dogs and organizing and taking pictures. And we were one of the first organizations that started doing like the pictures where we could share on social media back in the day, because the pictures from the shelters are always look like, the dogs are like terrified because they had just gotten there, and then they get a picture, and it's like a dating app. You're not going to put you're going to put your best picture on the dating app, right? You're not going to put your worst picture, because at least you want to get a date out of it, Yeah. So over the years, it sort of moved into, and we were doing a bunch of, walks and to raise money and do different things. But down the road now, I've sort of moved into helping people. If someone comes and says, "Hey, I love my dog. He got run over. He's going to have to get his leg amputated, but I can't afford it, so I'm going to have to put him down." So we step in and are able to say, "Hey, we'll help you with the amputation," and so they can keep their dog or whatever the situation is. So that's there, and then Lou Parker Project is part of my overall Lou life. I'm not doing as much with it. It's still there, but I'm not as active with it, because what I've done is I've transferred some of that energy over to a pet area at Be Kind & Co. and to KTLA. Mm-hmm. So at KTLA, what I've got now is we have the general manager of the LA Animal Services come on every Thursday with a dog that needs to be adopted. Every Thursday at 1:00, and we introduce the doggy, and then we have a tip on animals just in general, like protecting them from coyotes or, living in the heat or rabies or whatever the situation is. So what I feel like is that we're getting a message across. Not only are we getting 4 dogs 100% adopted a month, we're also getting people to the shelters, because people go in droves to get the dog they see on TV. But if they don't get that dog, now all of a sudden they're at the shelter. So what does that mean? They're going to go in the shelter, and they're going to go and maybe shop around, and then they're going to have a good experience, and they're going to tell their friends, "Oh, shelter dogs are actually really cool. Rescue pups are great." And they learn that process of, there's so many beautiful animals out there that need a home. There's no need to be purchasing animals, or breeding them. And, and I'm sure some people out there do that are listening, but I'm a true believer in their beautiful rescue animals out there that need a home, little tiny ones and big ones. My dog, Monkey, I've had for 11 years. I got him from South LA, and he looked like he had just come off the streets, and he was super little rugrat, and he is the love of my life. I can't imagine that I'd had the last 11 years without him. I'm going to clone him.
I bet.
I'm just kidding. I'm not going to clone him, but but yeah. So Lou Parker Project's been definitely one of the projects that I started in my life. But like I said, sometimes I think, why do I keep continuing to create projects or companies or different things? It's like, but you only have one life, and you got to do what your passion leads you to, and animals and making other people's lives just a little bit easier. I would say that's my passion. Those are my two passions.
Well, I say you and my wife need to meet, because she is a carbon copy of you. I mean, literally, my wife would fill our house with rescue animals if she could. Her dream is to own a farm in which we can rescue animals from all walks of life. So I'm sure you two definitely need to meet down the road, because I'm sure you probably
awesome.
Start another company with her. Who knows?
Exactly.
So before we wrap up here, as somebody who competed, won Miss USA, went on to a successful media career, and is now doing great things in LA, and doing all the stuff that we talked about. For those girls who right now are moving on or getting ready to move on from pageants, maybe some advice for them, not just from a career standpoint, but just from a life standpoint, and maybe just mindset of where do you take this and where do you go with it?
You can look at what you've learned. I mean, sometimes we go through life so quickly that we don't actually look back at the lessons that we learned from life and from our experiences. And maybe as you move forward, if you're going into college, or if you're moving into a different area of your life, you're getting your first new job, or whatever that looks like, maybe just take a few minutes to sit down and journal write of what your goals were and what you accomplished, and maybe what you learned from the experience, and maybe one or two maybe mistakes that you made from it, and how you can not make those mistakes again, not in terms of competition, but just things that you could maybe have done better. And then look at the positives and just say, I'll take what this is and move to the next level. But deep down, it doesn't really matter about pageants or TV or anything. What really matters from a woman's point of view, woman to woman, and what I've learned at my age now, is that we have to love ourselves. We have to love ourselves unconditionally, because if we don't love ourselves unconditionally, we can't love other people. And if we're not kind to ourselves, we can't be kind to other people. And so if you can just stop for a second and realize there's nothing that can define perfection. I mean, perfection doesn't exist. So let go of trying to be perfect, and just live each day from a good place, and be a good person, and set goals, and everything in life is going to be okay.
Some great advice there. And by the way, for those of you listening, if you want to learn more about Lou, or maybe even reach out to her, just go to her website, louparker.com. That's LUParker.com. Lou, thanks so much for sharing your story. And by the way, I know RPM would love to have you back in South Carolina if it's not during sweeps period. That's one of these years.
Yes,
so
exactly.
We'd certainly love to have you back.
That would be great. And Tim, also, too, I'm totally into Instagram right now. And if anybody wants to join me on Instagram, it's Lou Parker LA. I love it. I'm like obsessed with Instagram right now.
I think everybody is. I think you're right in the group there.
It's so much fun. Well, it was a pleasure to talk to you, and life is good. Happy rest of the year, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Lou, thanks so much. Have a great day. That is today's episode. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And do me a favor, subscribe to the podcast. You can do so on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, the podcast app, Google Play, or you can just go to lifeafterthecrown.com. And by the way, if you're still involved in the pageant world and you're wondering what Life After the Crown will look like for you and how to prepare for it, download my free Life After the Crown Starter Guide. It's a quick read. It's about 35 pages. It will give you a great blueprint on how to start planning now and not when it's all over. To get it, just go to timtialdo.com/starter guide. And for weekly podcast updates, just follow me on Instagram @timtialdo. Until next time, remember the words of 1 Corinthians 10:13. No test or temptation that comes your way is beyond the course of what others have had to face. All you need to remember is that God will never let you down. He'll never let you be pushed past your limit. He'll always be there to help you come through it. Have a great week, everybody.